Hey there, welcome back to the Smell of Logic channel. I am Ramona, and today's Reddit story is, what is the scariest thing a kid has said to you? Uh, let's find out. Because I'm not that kids are creepy. No, not at all. But kids have a different sense and different sensibilities, and so some of these things might be a little weird. 2 years ago, I was looking through my elementary school yearbook with my 5-year-old cousin when we were at a page with a second grade class. She points to a boy's photo and said, "That looks just like Nicholas." When I asked who Nicholas was, she says, "The boy in my closet." We kept looking through the pictures. I almost died. Yeah, it's a little creepy. Back when I was in high school, I worked for a fast food restaurant. One day, a guy that I had seen before but never spoken to comes in for lunch with his son, who is about 4 or 5. They order and sit down, and I bring their stuff out, and I give them their food, and the kid points to me and goes, "Who is that guy?" I turned around, and there was no one else in the store, so I asked the kid what guy he was talking about. And he said, "The guy that's following you around with his hand on your shoulder." To which I replied with what I could only describe as a WTF face. The kid's dad then goes, "I told you to stop telling people things like that. They don't like it." I found that kind of creepy, considering it apparently wasn't the first time he blurted out something random like that. But at the same time, I brushed it off because, let's face it, kids are effing weird. About a week later, they show up again. By this point, I had told my coworker about what the little kid had said to me, and she didn't believe me, so I made her take their order out. She comes back and is totally freaked out and tells me the kid asked her about the fire. She figured he was talking about the flames coming from the grill, so she told him that it was okay and not to worry about it. And he goes, "No, not that fire, silly. The big one. People said it was a long time ago, but they're still here." At this point, my coworker basically just turned around and left him and came to tell me that she wasn't serving them anymore. I actually felt kind of bad because I could tell that it wasn't the first time the dad had brought him somewhere only to have him creep everyone out. They only ever come back a few times after that. I still randomly see them around town, and the creepy little kid is now a relatively normal-looking teenager. And the replies go like this. "I wonder if he's still seeing shit. I used to see shadow people when I was a kid, but they have mostly disappeared now that I am an adult." I wasn't the only one. I never knew other people saw shadow people. I have stories for days about that. I used to see shadow people too. My little sister told me about this wolf shadow she sees every night. So yeah, there's a lot of experiences there. I think it is pretty common. Children, you hear this and it's anecdotal, I suppose. That, children are more open, their minds are less clouded, their emotions or whatever are less bombarded by practicalities. So they're more open to seeing things and feeling things and sensing things. My own son, I know he was. And then he grew out of it eventually, and it's good and bad. I mean, you kind of like hearing about it. You kind of like, it's interesting, I guess, if you're wired like I am. It's kind of interesting to hear this stuff. But also, I know it was scary at times, and it's interesting. No matter how you want to put it, it's an interesting concept. Okay, next story. A few months ago, I went up to Michigan to visit my brother and nephews. Well, while I was up there, apparently my oldest nephew asked his mom who the man in the tuxedo with the red tie is. I didn't hear about this until after I went back home. A month before I left Michigan, I was at work, and at the bottom of the set of stairs was a guy in a tuxedo with a red tie. I never told anyone about him until after I visited them. See? I work in daycare, and this literally just happened today. "Ms. Nikki, I have a story to tell you. I was a baby once, but I wasn't always a baby. When I was big, I was scary, and I did a lot of bad things. I used to chase down girls, and bam, dead. And I'd run up behind them and go, rah, and I guess that's why God made me a baby again, and now I'm 4, but I won't hurt girls anymore." And someone replied with, "That kid was Ted Bundy." It's possible. You never know. I know this isn't going to add tons to the conversation, but I thought it was semi-interesting. My sister, who was born in 1990, claims to have been at my parents' wedding, but they married right before I was born in 1984. Thing is, we aren't the family that those kind of things happen to, and none of us are very into the paranormal or supernatural. But to this day, the nonchalance of which she recalls it has always given me the chills. I remember watching a video with a little kid saying he was a tree in a past life, and I think he mentioned something about the pain trees endure being cut down. Tried to find the video again recently with no luck. Not creepy so much as adorable. My son and I were lying on his trampoline. He says, "I never killed anybody. They didn't have to take my arm, but the ground was all covered in blood. My theory? Reincarnated World War I soldier. Yeah, that sounds like it. Or, possibly any other war. Someone replies with that. Yeah, why not World War II? Or the Civil War, or the War of 1812, or the Vietnam War, or the Revolutionary War, or maybe a war from the future that hasn't happened yet. This one time, my front door neighbor's little, 4-year-old little girl told me, I want to peel your skin off. I had a burn on my arm from cooking, and it had scabbed pretty bad. She was referring to that. A while ago, I was laying down with my nieces, trying to get them out to sleep, and my youngest, who I was facing, pinches my nose and says, "Ah, sleepy, auntie, sleepy, shh." I pop open my eyes, and all she does is say, "Oh," and close her eyes. She had just turned 2 and hasn't done that since, but it was only a few months ago. When I was about 16, my little brother, who was 6 at the time, started yelling to me about a rabbit who would come and visit him. I blew it off, thinking it was just his imagination. The next few days, that was all he talked about, how the rabbit would open a hole in the wall. He said he left his body and went through the hole, and the rabbit showed him places and told him things that when he got back he couldn't remember. I just told him he was probably dreaming it all up. Well, that night there was scratching on my wall in my room. I looked around and couldn't find anything making the noise, and decided that it must be something outside, or a mouse that had got inside the wall. Well, it just got louder and louder until I finally got dressed and went outside. Nothing was there. I went back to my room where the scratching was still going on. I hit the wall a few times, hopefully scaring away the rodent. It stopped for a few seconds and then continued. It kept going until around 3 a.m., until it just stopped completely. The next morning we were eating breakfast, and my little bro didn't say anything about the rabbit. As glad as I was, I finally got him not to talk about it. It just wasn't normal. So I asked him, "Didn't the bunny see you last night?" Now what he said chills me even today. He said, "He didn't take me anywhere last night. He told me he was trying to see you, but you wouldn't let him in. He said you tried to hit him." After that, I started asking questions about this bunny. All I got was that it would take him places and tell him secrets. The stuff he learned he would forget when he came back. Also, the bunny wasn't just a bunny. He supposedly looked like a guy off of Donnie Darko, a more realistic version. But the movie hadn't been released yet. The bunny finally quit coming around after another week. He tried to get my brother to come live with him, my brother said no, he wanted to stay with his mommy and daddy. The bunny has never been back since. Sadly, my little bro passed away 10 years ago. This happened, but not too long ago, actually. There was this little girl that came up to me when I was sitting down at one of those little benches that have supermarkets by the vending machines. She introduced herself to me, and she said her name was Linda. I told her, "My name is Melvin." "Hi, Melvin. Cindy said she can see you." And I thought to myself, what the F? What is she going on about? I asked her if she meant her imaginary friend. "No, Cindy, the girl that lives here. She's very lonely. She says you can see her even though you can't see her. It's okay, though. My daddy says he doesn't see her either." Then she skipped away towards her dad, who had just finished bagging the stuff up. I don't doubt that she was just a kid with an overactive imagination. I had full-on conversations with my bathroom wall when I was a kid. Regardless, I found the whole thing pretty unsettling. One of my 5-year-old students came up to me one day, took me by the hand, and pulled me down to her eye level. She looked at me straight in the eyes and said, "Teacher, there is an evil spirit attacking your soul. I can see it in your eyes. Don't worry, though. Everything will be okay." She then ran off to play and acted like she didn't say anything at all. Felt a little spooked for the rest of the day. Yeah, I can understand that. My parents said I would do some creepy things when I was only a few years old. This was before I could talk, so I guess it doesn't follow the topic exactly, but it kind of fits. Apparently, when I was little, I would just stare at nothing. My mom would see me in the room staring into space, and she'd come back. I'd still have my eyes fixed on the same spot. This may not be too spooky, but it is spooky is that while spacing out, sometimes my eyes would follow something around the room, but there would be nothing there, and it actually seemed like I was staring at something. Sometimes I'd also apparently jump and flinch suddenly and turn my head to look at something, as if I'd heard a loud noise that had startled me, except that I was deaf for the first 3 years of my life, which is when this all was happening, and there wasn't any actual sound. So, yeah, I was too young to remember any of that, but according to my parents, it happened. They always said it was just like me listening and talking to angels. And there's a reply that says crazy. Something similar happened with my daughter when she was around 6 months old. She was just sitting there, playing with her toys, our dog laying next to her. Out of nowhere, they both look at the same direction, seem to be following something. The hair on my dog's back stood up and her eyes perked as if she were angry. It freaked me out. I believe kids see stuff that adults can't. They are naive on the existence of other beings and ghosts. Not exactly scary, but it definitely gave me the chills, and still does. My friend and I were babysitting her 4-year-old cousin one night, and she really believed in all the reincarnation stuff, and decided to test out her theories on her little cousin. She began asking him questions that didn't quite understand, and then stated it simply. What were you before you were blank kid's name? He replied that he was a conductor and waved his hands in the motion as a conductor would. The problem with that is that the little boy was born blind. This was just during the night of All Souls' Day. My 4-year-old cousin and I were playing Toca Boca. The other adults were watching a horror movie outside, so we heard lots of screaming and giggling. He said, "The enemies are outside. They'll pay for what they've done." Could mean anything, but it freaked me out. Edit. Then again, he does say the strangest things, like how he'll destroy that boy for not eating his food. Another 3-year-old cousin. When my daughter was about a year old, we lived in a nice apartment complex. We used to walk next door all the time and visit our neighbor Joe. We'd play video games, listen to him play guitar, cook, discuss politics. We always had a nice time. One particular afternoon, after Eliana woke up from her nap, I decided to meet my now ex-husband over there. I picked her up, changed her, got her a snack. As we were walking over there, she was chatting away as well as any 1-year-old can. As I walked into Joe's apartment, she stopped, looked up at the ceiling, towards the corner, and let out a terrible scream. I've never heard anything like that from her before. She immediately began to climb over my shoulder. I kept trying to figure out what it could be, and during this, I almost dropped her. She was absolutely frantic. I took her outside and soothed her. After a few moments, we went back in. Same thing happened again. I'm not sure what she saw, but she was absolutely terrified. Tonight, I took my son out to run up some energy before bed. As soon as I set him down, he pointed at nothing in the yard and said, "Ghost." "Go inside?" He's almost 2. The reply was, "This reminds me of when I was watching a movie with my niece a while back. She was just over 2, but can't speak very well. We were sitting there in the living room. I was watching a show, not a kid's show, not a scary show. I think it may have been like Breaking Bad or Arrow or something. And she was playing. She suddenly freaks the F out, runs over to me saying, "Scared, scared, scared," because she can't speak and it sounds more like scared, though. And she was crying. And I picked her up. She just points to the entryway and says, "Guy," a few times. She was like that for a few moments until my mom got back. I lost my boyfriend to a stray bullet a few months back, and when I went to visit his family a few days after it happened, his little cousin came up to me while I was crying. He asked me why I was crying, and so I told him that I missed my boyfriend. He gets so confused. He gets this confused look on his face and says, "Why?" He's sitting on the front porch. I guess that's not really scary, but it was definitely unsettling. My daughter is generally laid back and not really afraid of anything. A few years ago, when she was 2, we lived in an apartment with a big patio window. One night, she walks up to the glass door leading out to the patio and stares motionless into the night for several minutes. Shortly after, she runs into my arms saying, "Scary, too scary." She wouldn't let me put her down and demanded that I hold her and rock her for the next half hour. Eventually, she starts repeating over and over, "The dark coming inside now. The dark coming inside now." My 4-year-old niece's grandma was buried earlier in the week, and we tried to explain to her that Grandma wouldn't be able to play with her anymore. Then she points to the air beside her. "But Grammy's right there." 2 nights ago, my 6-year-old stepdaughter, who is sick and has a very raspy voice, fell asleep on the couch downstairs. My wife and I were asleep upstairs already, so I turned off all the lights downstairs and went to pick her up off the couch to carry her upstairs. As I start to lift her, she opens her eyes, reaches up with one hand and grabs the back of my head, looks me in the eye, and in that raspy voice says, we want you to come with us." She then fell right back asleep, and I carried her to bed, wondering what had just happened. I was babysitting for an 8-year-old daughter of a family friend in my house a couple of years ago, and I put a movie on in her bedroom. Then I went back to get her. She was standing in the hallway whispering, "Bad ghost." I just pretended like that didn't happen. It definitely did, though, and it scares the F out of me. My stepson went into a fit at one point and told my wife that he was going to kill her and broke the rod to his window in half and tried to stab her. He spent a week in a mental ward after that. I have always felt that if a child is seeing something, don't disregard it. I think they have something going on that maybe would do great things with that gift. For my story, I was visiting my cousin, she was about 8, in Italy, and we were sharing her room. Before going to bed the 5th night we were there, I wished her a good night. She replied, and this was translated, "Good night, I hope you too sleep sound." I asked her to repeat what she said, and she said the same thing, and pretty much from then on, from what I could see in the dark, she pointed to the corner of her room. My neighbor's kid a few years back was reporting seeing a dog with a man's face walking around their apartment. I was in the living room, and she came up to him, and he came up to me, pointed at me, and said, "Da, da, da, dee, die, 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 die," and continued saying the word die for a few more seconds. I actually stayed the night in their apartment once when they went out of town, and to get a little too spooky ghost hunting done, but I never saw anything. This past summer, I was at one of my girlfriend's relatives' birthday parties. She had a little cousin around age 10. Me and him get along great. Usually he wants me to run some football plays with him, but this night he was different. I noticed that he was sitting all alone on the back porch, so I approached him like usual and asked what was up. He too responded with, "I just really wish I would have done it last night." And I asked, "What's that?" He comes back with, "I wish I would have stabbed Mommy." I shat bricks. My baby sister was born 13 weeks premature and spent 2 months in the ICU. When she was around 3 or 4, she started telling us stories about the man who stood at her bed and watched over her when she was in the hospital. Just completely out of the blue. We hadn't asked her any leading questions or anything. She just volunteered the information. My mom thinks it was Jesus. I think it was one of our 2 long-dead grandpas. Either way, it gives us chills. At least someone was watching out for her. At least it wasn't scary. My 4-year-old sister spends a lot of time by herself, but she still loves being around people. Occasionally, she would sit up in bed and have an argument or talk like she is explaining something to someone. Yesterday, when she was in her playroom by herself, this happens almost every day, she gets about 10 small toys and calls them her students. She does the same. Oops, I lost my place. With about 10 stuffed animals, but one by one is the worst. The doll's name is Brielle, and she really likes that thing. Brielle is the scariest doll ever, and Mia, my sister's name, by the way, talks to her for long periods of time. You may think, well, lots of kids have doll friends, right? Well, my sister gave up on Brielle, like many of their toys, and forgot about them, and left them in her 4-foot dollhouse. Now she's moved on to imaginary friends. Probably about a week ago, she was in the room by herself, sweating. I asked what she'd been doing, and she replies, "Playing with my friend Isabel." She says stuff like, "Isabel is right there," and points next to me. May not be the scariest story out there, but definitely the scariest thing the child has said to me. My younger brother used to see a person he called the Blue Man until he was around 7 years old or so. My brother, who was a very serious kid and wasn't the type to make up stories to get attention, so we all thought it was really weird that he had an imaginary friend. He wouldn't always see the Blue Man, but every once in a while, after years of my brother seeing this Blue Man, one day he said, "Blue Man says he has to go away now." He never saw the Blue Man after that. Well, there we go. There's some unusual, creepy little stories there. Hope you have enjoyed these. I'm probably going to do another video because there's a lot of stuff here, and these are fun and they're interesting and stuff like that. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video, and go check out another one. There's plenty on the channel. Thanks again. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things, do none of the things, do some of the things. I can't tell you what to do. You are a strong, independent person, and that's why I like you. I will talk to you later, though. Bye.